Welcome to the Ascend 307 webinar series on employability skills. Today, our focus is on systems thinking. Please turn your attention to a brief welcome by the Wyoming State Superintendent, Megan Dagenfelder. And just give me a minute.
Hello, I'm Megan Dagenfelder, Wyoming State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and I'd like to welcome you to the Ascend 307 series of webinars. Ascend 307 is a multi-year initiative developed through a federal grant awarded to the Wyoming Department of Education. The overarching goal of the grant is to improve outcomes for students with disabilities by enhancing personnel preparation and professional development in education and transition services. The focus of this webinar is employability skills, the skills that employers consistently rank as essential for new hires. The 9 skills are grouped into 3 main categories: applied knowledge, which includes problem solving and decision making; effective relationships, which encompass functioning effectively as part of a team environment; and workplace skills, such as managing time and communicating with coworkers. One of the 6 key initiative areas in my strategic plan is preparing students for jobs, and employability skills are a critical component to this effort. I hope you find this content impactful and continue to watch further installments. Thank you.
Welcome back, and thanks for listening and your attention thus far. Employability skills, as Superintendent Dagenfelder said, are skills employers consistently rank as essential for new hires, but they aren't built exclusively in middle and high school. The core foundational skills need to be developed early from pre-kindergarten on as executive function skills. Executive function skills provide the foundation that enables development and application of employability skills as students transition from K-12 environment to employment and provide long-term benefits of better health, resilience, and reduced risk of criminal convictions. The WDE is moving toward using the term Essential Readiness Skills, which we feel encompasses both executive function and employability skills as those skills that prepare students for the next phase of life, whether that be to kindergarten, to middle or high school, or to the workforce. The Wyoming Department of Education has adapted the Employability Skills Framework, a federal resource for a Wyoming ready workforce. This infographic portrays 9 key employability skills grouped under 3 main categories, as explained by Superintendent Dagenfelder in the welcome video. Today, we are going to focus on systems thinking and teamwork, part of workplace skills. Please welcome our guest speakers for the webinar, who will guide us through what this skill looks like, applications to writing goals, and strategies to develop these skills. Stephen Prater is a Senior Technical Assistance Consultant at the American Institutes for Research, where he supports schools, districts, and states in special education, MTSS, and data-based individualization. He currently contributes to professional development of IEP development and implementation for Wyoming districts. Sheila Lovato is a Senior Technical Assistance Consultant at the American Institutes for Research, where she supports schools, districts, and states in using data and evidence-based practices to improve outcomes for students, particularly through MTSS and supports for students with disabilities. She currently contributes to WDE's Essential Skills micro-credential development. Stephen and Sheila, we now turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Trina. Glad to be here again. It's been a few months, and I always love being able to present in Wyoming since I am a Wyoming native myself. So, all right, as we get started, I'll get myself set up here. Want to make sure you're seeing my screen. Are you seeing my screen yet? Okay, thank you. Let's try that again. Hey, Perfect. Are you able to see that now, Stephen? Perfect. Okay. As we look back at the employability skills framework for the Wyoming Ready workforce, specifically under that workforce skills, we see systems thinking listed as a key skill that contributes directly to effective teamwork. Before we define it, I want to give you an opportunity to think about what we're talking about here. When you hear the term systems thinking, what comes to mind? Please take a moment to think about this and then share your responses in the Q&A. Okay, give you a few minutes to think about that. What do you think about with systems thinking? Well, I know that this census may be a new concept for some of you. Oh, here we go. Thank you, Cheryl. Systems thinking to me means understanding the hierarchy of the system and the role you play in the larger organization. This would include taking the perspective of the system and not just yourself in the bigger picture. Excellent. Great. Exactly. That is what I think of as systems thinking as well. So before, we're going to watch a video in just a few minutes to maybe give us a little bit more context around systems thinking. But that's a great definition that Cheryl gave us. But what actually makes up a system? As you watch this next video, I want you to consider what systems students have to navigate every day, both at school as well as at home.
Systems thinking means understanding how systems are interconnected, as well as understanding the dynamics within systems. A system is a configuration of parts connected and joined together by a web of relationships or networks. Systems thinking is nonlinear. This means that in systems, cause and effect are not necessarily linked or connected with simple step-by-step chains. Connections between human and natural systems are of particular interest because they offer excellent examples of cascading effects. Cascading effects means that what might seem to be a simple outcome of a given system can actually have a series of effects on other interconnected systems. Let's consider the following quick example of systems thinking. When looking at a hot dog, you might see a delicious ballpark fan favorite. However, have you ever considered how many miles, steps, or networks it takes to produce a hot dog with all your favorite toppings? Think about all the unique steps that are involved in producing just mustard. Mustard seeds come from India, and some of our favorite fancy mustards are prepared in France. Beyond the mustard seeds, mustards require turmeric, also made in India, and paprika from Hungary or the Netherlands. In addition, salt, water, and white vinegar are also needed. Considering the system that is involved in producing simply one condiment can be complex, let alone thinking about the entire process that is necessary to produce a fully loaded hot dog. People are not particularly well equipped for systems thinking. It's much easier to understand and interact with simple linear cause and effect chains. The more complex the system dynamics, the more difficult it is to know how decisions will play out. Oftentimes, decisions or actions at one point have an impact on another component within the system. For example, thinking about our ballpark hot dog, if mustard seed production is decreased by warmer weather patterns one year, then the price for this key ingredient is likely to rise. This, in turn, could limit production, making mustard seed more expensive and or not as readily available. Within systems thinking, it is important to see the interconnected nature of all the elements and to understand that reacting to a problem in one part of the system may have unintended consequences on other components or the process as a whole. Systems thinking does not claim complete knowledge. Rather, systems thinking is about assessing the degree of system complexity, analyzing system dynamics, and making decisions that reduce the risk of negative outcomes. To develop systems thinking, explore how things might change under different circumstances. Look at possible associations and connections beyond the information that is being presented. Consider conducting an institutional analysis, which includes a robust review of existing practices, mechanisms, and procedures currently in place. Share your findings with relevant stakeholders and discuss both hidden and visible flows. Seek possible explanations and relationships. Think more globally about how you are part of major economic, environmental, and social systems. Consider how these systems directly impact one another and how they influence the immediate systems you work within.
Okay, so as you watch this video that really outlines systems that we interact with or we see every day and how they interact, I want you to apply this to your students. Think about the systems that they interact with every day. What systems do they have to navigate, both at home and at school? Excellent, Cheryl. Yes, schedules and changes in schedules, communication, how our communication impacts everybody, time management, staffing, teacher changes, special activities, exactly. What else? Can anyone think of anything else? Any other systems that your students are navigating? Okay, those are great examples that you gave, Cheryl. A couple others that I can think of are like technology platforms. Yeah, there's a lot more. We could go on and on and on. Whether community resources, groupings, family responsibilities, we all navigate a lot of systems, and it's important to keep this in mind as we think about our students as well, everything that they are navigating. One of the reasons systems thinking is so important is that it helps learners move beyond seeing their work as individual effort alone, right? Just like we can see through the video how different systems impact each other, different things are interconnected. Students need to be able to see that as well, how their actions also impact others. When students think systematically, they start to recognize how roles, responsibilities, and actions affect one another. They see that what one person does or doesn't do has an impact on the rest of the group. Systems thinking also draws attention to structure and function. Instead of focusing only on how hard someone worked, students begin to notice how the system is set up, who's responsible for what, how tasks are organized, and how information moves through the group. Over time, this supports a deeper understanding that outcomes don't come from isolated behaviors. They emerge from how people interact, coordinate, and respond to one another within a system. This shift is what strengthens teamwork and collaborative problem solving, an important skill to have. So in the Q&A, why would systems thinking be necessary for post-school employment and success? Okay, I see a hand raised. And you can actually type in the Q&A. I don't think I can unmute and let you respond. But if you can type into the Q&A your response, that would be great. Yes, it is important to understand things like why communicating an absence or mistake is important, definitely. Why changes occur that may impact them or others around them, such as changes in shift schedules, workloads, and making reservations, or you may not get in. Very many numerous applications. You were introduced to the concept. I'm going to bring this back around to employability skills too. You've been introduced to that concept of soft skills in previous webinars, and soft skills are those personal, non-technical abilities that influence how someone works and interacts with others. Well, systems thinking fits, as we know, as you've already demonstrated, because it involves seeing those relationships and patterns, understanding cause and effect over time, anticipating unintended consequences, and adapting decisions based on feedback. These abilities depend on cognitive habits and interpersonal judgment rather than technical knowledge. So organizations group them with skills like communication, teamwork, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. Systems thinking is the umbrella skill. So that's a really important way as we move forward that I want you to think of systems thinking. It's an umbrella skill that really makes every other skill work together. And as Stephen talks more about strategies you can use, I think you'll be able to see why it is an umbrella skill. What soft skills are strengthened through systems thinking? So as you look at this list of soft skills or think about soft skills, what are some that you feel like are strengthened through systems thinking? I think for me, as I read through the human-centered, the ones that really stick out to me are those communication and collaboration skills, right? Such an important part of systems thinking, being able to collaborate with others and communicate when we need to, as well as emotional awareness and self-monitoring. In the workplace, systems thinking shows up every day, even when people don't use that term. Employees are constantly working within systems made up of people, processes, tools, and timelines. I'm sure you can all relate as you work within a system. Systems thinking helps workers understand how the role connects to others, recognizing that a quick fix can create new problems and make adjustments, and then they can make adjustments based on feedback. It also supports self-monitoring, such as paying attention to how individual actions affect team progress and teamwork, where success depends on coordinating roles, respecting differences, and solving problems together rather than working in isolation. This is why employers value systems thinking. It helps people work effectively in complex real-world environments. And it's actually in job descriptions, employers often use words that are associated with systems thinking, such as you see here, with your problem solving, your strategic thinking, continuous improvement. These skills matter in the workplace because most jobs don't involve working in isolation. Very few do. Employees operate inside systems that include people, processes, timelines, and expectations, and those systems are constantly changing. System thinking helps workers understand how the role fits into a bigger picture, while executive functioning skills help support the planning, the organization, self-monitoring, and adjustment when things don't go as planned. Strong teamwork depends on these skills really working together. Employees must manage their own emotions, respect differences, listen to others, and contribute productively to shared goals. When workers can think in systems, monitor their own impact, and collaborate effectively, they're better equipped to solve problems, adapt to challenges, and succeed in those real-world work environments. So what does this look like in the classroom? Notice similarities between some of the things that we've talked about already, those things that are happening in the workplace. As you build and practice these skills in the classroom, you really are preparing students for future employability. So as you read each of these 5 skill or strategies or practices in the classroom, which of these do you currently use? And can you give us an example of how you use it? Okay. Um, one example is use the example of why being on time is so important, and give the example of waiting in the drive-thru at McDonald's on someone who hasn't gotten to work on time. Good. Or not showed up at work at all, right? Which then there aren't enough people. Okay. Anything else? Any other examples of how you've used this in the classroom? Okay. In past webinars, I know you've heard us discuss connection between executive functioning and employability skills. Well, executive functioning skills are what allows systems thinking to move from understanding to action. While systems thinking helps us see how things are connected, executive functioning helps us manage ourselves within those systems. So it's vital that we help develop those executive functioning skills as well. These skills support planning, organizing, and prioritizing tasks, as well as monitoring progress and adjusting strategies when something isn't working. They also play a critical role in teamwork, helping individuals regulate emotions, stay flexible, and remain focused on shared goals when challenges arise. In the workplace and in the classroom, systems don't function well unless the people within them can manage their time, behavior, and thinking. Executive functioning skills make it possible to participate effectively in complex systems and collaborative environments. In this webinar, you will learn some strategies that will help you develop the executive functioning skills that support systems thinking. So in the Q&A, to what extent are you intentionally developing student systems thinking skills necessary for school and post-school success? And what questions do you still have about systems thinking before we start talking about strategies? And as I look back over some of the responses from Cheryl in the Q&A, she's given a lot of great examples of this already, where she is using examples of real life situations in the classroom. helping them to understand how decisions impact others. Are there any others you can think of before we move on? Okay. Well, thank you for your participation. I'm going to turn this over to Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Sheila. So just like so Sheila had some great points, and in the chat, there's been some great examples of using systems in real life. So one of the main ways and main things that students will use a system or be a part of a system is if they're a part of a team. A team is going to be something that they're a system that they're going to be a part of right now in school, and then as they get out into the workplace, they're always, like Sheila said, there's hardly any jobs out there where they're going to work in isolation, right? They're going to work as part of a team all the time. So in this next section, so I'm going to point out some of those skills that students need in order to be a productive part of a team or a system, and strategies and activities that you can use in the classroom to help build those skills. So that's part of what I want to do here is I'm going to give you some activities and strategies, but I also want you all to learn from each other as well, because I'm sure you've done things or you've seen things in your classroom that will help to build some of these skills that we're going to talk about. So when I ask, make sure and put those examples in there so people can learn from what you've done or people can learn from your experience. So the three main skills that we're going to talk about are right there, these three pillars of teamwork: awareness, communication, and accountability. So if we take each one of those one by one, so awareness of yourself and others. So not only self-awareness, but also awareness of the perspective of others. And we're going to talk more about each of these individually. Communication, verbal communication and written communication. So it's important for them to be able to effectively communicate verbally and written, but also listening to others. So that you're going to see some when we list some skills for communication, a lot of it is just listening and making sure you're understanding others' perspectives. And the last thing there is accountability. So not only for them to be accountability to themselves and their tasks that they are responsible for, but then how is that, and this is how it works into a system, how does your task affect the other people on the team, affect how the job gets done, or affect if the project gets done and how well it gets done. So these are the three things we're going to talk about, and we're going to show you some strategies and activities that you can do to help build these skills in the classroom. All right. So the first thing is self-awareness. Okay. So first of all, students may not understand how they can use their skills. They can use the things that they feel are their strengths and that they're already good at, how those can be used when they're collaborating with others in the team. They may not realize that yet. So they don't recognize how their individual strengths can be used. So this is just an example of something very simple that you could recreate this very easily in your classroom. So on the left there is just a list of possible leadership skills. So it's not a complete list, just a list of skills there. So what includes things like teamwork, adaptability, creativity, things like that. So what you would have the students do is list those, take some of those skills and list them in that middle column there where it says skills I possess. So things that they think they're already good at. So maybe they think they're good at being creative. Maybe they think they're good at time management. Have them list those things they already feel like they're good at. And then have them list how can they use that skill if they're working with a team? How would they use their creativity? How would they, or how have they used their creativity, or how have they used their time management skills to be successful? And that way they'll help them realize I already have skills that I can use to contribute to a team. That way they're already like one step forward, 1 foot forward when they have to join teams either in school or in the workplace to feel like they can be productive and feel like they can already contribute to a team. Okay, so along with self-awareness, we talked about that is awareness of others. So this is another thing, especially if you're going to work with big groups of people, you're going to work with people from all different types of cultures or different beliefs and things like that. So that's an important bullet there. If you see that second bullet, it says help students understand that they don't necessarily have to agree with others' perspectives. but it's always key to try to seek understanding, try to understand where people are come from. That way you can adjust the way you work together, the way you interact together, and it just helps to make a more cohesive team and one that will get along easier, and you can learn from each other. Hopefully they learn from each other. So that's what that quote there says, and this is from an article about perspective taking, and it says perspective taking may improve business outcomes not only by giving us access to more information than we would have had without it, but also ramping up activity in the core brain regions involved in creative problem solving and innovation. So basically, what that's saying is not only do you learn from other people and you learn more about whatever task or activity you're working on together, but it also activates the parts of your brain, the creative problem solving and innovation parts of your brain, just by taking other people's perspective and learning where they're coming from. So it's a skill that helps not only the team, but also helps you as an individual. So on the next slide, this shows an activity that you could do uh, with students in your classroom, and we'll do a shortened version of this activity. We won't do the all take all the time it says to take here, but let's just work on this. Just do this yourselves, and then I'll get a little feedback from you about what you think about it. So number one there, this is how you would do this activity. You would ask the students to spend about 30 seconds recalling a specific situation during the last 2 weeks, or you could just say, sometime recently, when they attempted to take another person's perspective on a topic. So it could be anything from, they talk about business negotiation there, could be a work situation, could be a conversation with someone in their family. So you would ask them to take about 30 seconds to do that. And then you would ask them to spend about 3 minutes describing that situation in detail from beginning to end using written bullet points. So you would have them write bullet points describing that situation and what happened. And then you ask them to take about 1 minute to imagine that situation from the other person's perspective. So specifically, imagine how you think they would describe the interaction. So thinking about how the other person would describe that interaction that you just had with them. And then the fourth step there would be reflect for 30 seconds on what you did that was useful to understand the other person's perspective. Okay, so let's do a shortened part version of this activity so you can kind of practice it yourself. And then I want to hear a little feedback of how you think it would work or how you think students you work with would react to this activity. Okay, so take about 30 seconds. Take about 30 seconds and think of a situation where you attempted to take another person's perspective on a topic. So again, anything from work or conversation with your family. So take about 30 seconds. I won't make you write anything down. You can just think about it. So just think about 30 seconds and then I'll give you a few minutes to think about how you would describe that situation from beginning to end. All right. So take about 30 seconds to do that. All right, so I'm gonna give you another about 30 seconds to a minute to do that step number two there. So now you have that situation you've been thinking about. So think about the details of that situation from beginning to end. So you can write it down if it helps you. But I just really want you to just think about that situation. So just think about how it went, the interaction between you and that person, and just think about from beginning to end how it went. I'll give you about 30 more seconds, 30 seconds to a minute to do that. All right. So now that you've kind of thought about it from beginning to end, so now think about it from their point of view. Think about it from their perspective. How do you think they would have described that interaction between you two? All right. So again, let's just take about another 30 seconds and just think about how the other person would have thought about that interaction. All right. And let's do that last step there. So now reflect on what you did that was useful to understand the other person's perspective. And also something that you could add to this, what's something else that you could have done differently or better to understand that person's perspective? So just take about 30 minutes, just self-reflect what you did that was useful, or maybe something you could have done that was better to help to understand that person's perspective. All right, so good. So now think about your students, or think about students you currently have, students you've worked with in the past. How would they how would they react to an activity like this? How would they benefit from an activity like this? So in the Q&A box, just put what you think. Like, do you think this would be helpful for students you work with? Do you think it's good for them to practice this perspective taking activity? And then so while we wait for people to put some things in the Q&A, I'll just say I think this activity is good, and here's the reason why is because if we want them to be good at these employability skills, such as perspective taking and things like that, then you have to have them practice them. Just like academics. If you want them to be better at reading, they have to practice reading. If they want to be better at math, they have to practice math. So just like any other skill, if you want them to be better, like in sports as well, if they want to be better at baseball, they practice baseball. If you want them to be better at employability skills and something like perspective taking, then you need to give them opportunities to practice these things in an environment like a classroom where they can learn from their other peers, they can learn from feedback from the teacher, they can hear what other people do, they can hear what from the experience of the teacher. So the classroom's the perfect place to practice these types of skills. So then students can take those and use them in other classes, but also use them when they go out into the workplace. So what do y'all think? What do you think about how your students you've worked with they would use this type of activity? Okay, great. Cheryl says they work on perspective taking all the time. Great, because I was wondering if that was something that people actually worked on in schools or not. She says they use role plays, watch and discuss video vignettes as observers, share the various opinions of the viewers, discussing why people had different thoughts. We also talk about how perspective and personal history influences and share personal stories and examples. That's great. That's perfect. I mean, that's exactly the type of thing. And not only like an activity like this would be great for students with autism. This is something a student with autism is definitely uh, going to need help with. But also, I mean, just about any kind of teenager. Teenagers aren't the greatest at thinking of things from other people's perspectives. So it doesn't even have to be student with a disability. It can just be teenagers overall learning to take the perspective of others. So thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. All right. On the next slide, just any other strategy. So Cheryl gave us a good strategy there that she helps to build awareness. So anybody else, either help them to build perspective of others. That's Cheryl's example, or maybe self-awareness. So do y'all have any other strategies or ideas that you've used to help students build awareness of themselves or in others? Go ahead and give you a little bit of time to put it in the Q&A box there. All right. Well, we showed you a couple of examples, and then Cheryl gave you a good example in the Q&A. So, if you think of others, if something comes to you while we move on, that go ahead and put it in the Q&A box, and I'll call it out. But we'll go ahead and talk about our next skill, which is communication. So, you see there bolded at the top, it says collaboration requires communication, and effective communicators should be able to do all these listed right here. So we'll go through each of these a little bit one by one. So explain their own ideas, express their feelings in an open but non-threatening way, listen carefully to others. So that was something that we mentioned earlier. It's not just about being able to explain themselves, yes, but also being able to listen others and understanding where others are coming from, asking questions to clarify others' ideas and emotions, sense how others feel based on their nonverbal communication, like facial expressions, tone of voice, diminished participation. Initiate conversations about the group climate or process if they sense tensions brewing, and reflect on the group's activities and interactions and encourage other group members to do so. So, as professionals, as people that have been in the workplace, whether school or outside school, for more than half your life, probably. So you've probably interacted with other professionals who didn't exhibit some of these skills. These skills are hard. Not these skills aren't intrinsic for everybody, and they just don't come around, don't come naturally to everybody, just because you're a person, right? So these are skills that students need to practice and they need to get better at and get feedback on. So if we want them to practice these skills, then we need to give them opportunities in the classroom to practice these skills. So let's look at a couple of ideas of how you could practice these in the classroom. So this is actually 5 different activities or 5 different strategies. So this is not all just one activity. So these are 5 different ways that you could help students to build communication skills and develop a healthy group climate. So number 1 there says, randomize group members to increase the chances of students encountering peers with diverse backgrounds and interests. Okay, that's very important. So I know I went to a small school, and I know there's probably a ton of small schools in Wyoming where a lot of the population is probably very similar to each other, correct? And so, but when they get out in the workforce, they're going to encounter people that grew up in a differently than they did. Maybe they're a different religion they are. Maybe they different values and skill, or values and things they believe. So as much as we can, we want to give students those chances to interact with other people and learn how to interact with other people that may not have the exact same background or interests that they do, and just learn how to interact with those people, because that's something they're going to have to be doing for the rest of their life. So instead of letting them just pick their groups every time, where they probably pick their same 2 or 3 people that they're best friends with, randomize the groups and force them to kind of interact with other people that they're not used to interacting with. So that's one thing, just an easy one you could do. Second there, design icebreaker activities that promote awareness and appreciation of inherent differences within a group. So again, just learning about each other, learning like somebody that has a different belief or background than you, like learning about that and understanding it more. So just like that perspective taking, the more we learn and understand about others, it's going to activate those parts parts of our brain that's for collaboration and creativity. So having those icebreakers where people can learn, or students can learn more about each other. The third one says, walk students through effective strategies for identifying and overcoming group conflict. Again, if this is an important skill, and this is not a skill that we're just born knowing how to do. So you as a teacher and as a professional, you probably already have some good strategies, or you could probably find some strategies, just through looking on a good search or a website, and you teach them these strategies. So if we want them to be good problem solvers, good ways to address conflict in a group, then we have to teach them those strategies. So school is the perfect place for, again, for them to practice those skills in a safe place and to get feedback from peers and from teachers. So that's another thing you could do. The fourth thing there, encourage students to participate actively and pose questions to their peers. So again, they're not going to learn from each other. They're not going to learn about how to improve if they don't ask questions to each other. So put them in those situations and put them in those activities where they have to ask questions. There's a lot of icebreaker type activities out there where you have to ask people questions to get through the activity. So see if you can find some of those and use them in your classroom. The last one there is going to kind of go into our next skill that we're going to talk about. But that last one there says, devote class time to help students reflect on their group dynamic and overall functioning. You can provide them with prompt questions to consider and/or facilitate a conversation driven by student insights, questions, and concerns. So next time you have a group assignment, part of that group assignment, have them reflect, how did it go in our group? How did we work together? Was it easy to get all the tasks done? Did we work collaboratively? How was our communication? Have them reflect on themselves and see how they did as a group, and then that way they know ways to improve in the future. Okay, so let's look at our next slide. That's going to tell us about another thing that you can do when you're doing group work in your classrooms. Documenting tasks. So documenting tasks are going to be important when they're working in groups and when they're in the workplace, because number one, existing members, it helps them to keep track of tasks and deadlines. What is everybody responsible for, and when is it going to be done? New members understand what's being done. So when new people join the team or join the group, they can easily see what's been done and what needs to be done. And the last thing there, ensures everyone remains on the same page. So again, if it's documented and everybody has access to this, then everybody can stay on the same page. So this is something you can do in the classroom to help facilitate this. Is next time you have a group assignment, have the students document the tasks that are going to be a part of that assignment, and then have them provide the information such as who's going to be assigned to that task, when is that task is going to be done, when is the completion date, and then what are the necessary resources. So have that be a part of the group assignment and have them document that so they all are clear about who's doing what, when is it done by, and what do they need to get these tasks done. And that's going to lead us into our next skill that we're going to talk about. I'm sorry, but before we do that, let's talk about any strategies that you all have used to help students with their communication skills. So we gave you several things. There's those 5 examples of things you could do in your classroom. There's documenting tasks. So what are some things that you've all done to help build communication skills with students? Oh, there's a good one. Cheryl put a long one on there. Thanks, Cheryl. She was ready. Let me see what Cheryl says. She says they use games as a great way in a non-threatening way. Yes, I love that idea. Using games as a non-threatening way to do that. Playing 20 questions to guess a person, place, or thing. Playing ethics in the workplace and making decisions about how to handle employee actions from the viewpoint of the employer, where consequences follow based on decisions. Oh, good. So they actually see, like, what decision would I make and how would that affect what's going to happen. They do mock interviews in front of the class, interview to talk about interviewing skills, clothing choices, questions and answers, practice taking and giving corrective feedback. They have weekly meetings where students give feedback to staff on how things are going, what's working, should they do instead. And they do volunteer projects where students take turns being the quality control specialist and identifies things that needs corrective or adjustments. Man, so after this, Cheryl may need to give her information out so people can contact Cheryl and do some of the things that she's doing in her classroom, because she's doing some great stuff there. Thanks for sharing, Cheryl. Anybody else want to share anything real quickly? So again, yeah, we're getting a little low on time, so we'll go ahead and move on to our next activity. But if you think of something, or if you want to put it in there in the Q&A, put it in there, and we'll call it out and we'll talk about it. So the last skill we want to talk about is being accountable. So that means staying accountable. Well, how to be accountable involves making clear commitments and tracking progress. So that involves that skill we were just talking about before, where you document tasks, you document who is responsible for what. But this is a way for students, once those are documented, they can track progress. So this helps students understand how their task affects the progress of others and the team as a whole. So if they don't get their task done, the team can't get their task done, and they're not going to be successful as a team, even if everybody else does their part. Each person has to do their own task. So on the right there, you see an example of how students can track progress on tasks and reflect how they can improve. So that's just, again, just a real simple way for them to say, and this could be used, this could be for an individual person tracking their own task, or it could also be used as a way for a team to track their task, and as long as they document who's going to be responsible for that task. But you just list the task there, you list the start date and the due date, and then there's little notes about how you're progressing on that task and was that task completed yet or not. So this is something that they would do each week. But what I really like, if you do something like this in your classroom, is not just this, but using those reflections questions there at the bottom, because those reflection questions really talk about what did you do like that was successful, what helped you to stay on task this week, or what's something that you could do differently. If you weren't able to stay on task, what can you do differently? And did you encounter any challenges, and how did you address those challenges? So yes, keeping track of the task and the progress in those tasks, but then reflecting like, okay, how did this go? How can we do this better? What did we do? What were we already doing well? So that's something that anytime you do any kind of group assignment, or you do some specialty assignments like Cheryl was listing, where you're kind of forcing them to work as a team, forcing them to work as a group, this could be a good aspect you could add to it to help them track their task. All right, so the next slide here is just any other strategies that you've helped to use students build accountability for themselves and their role on a team. Anything that you've used in your classrooms. Okay, so yes. All right. Well, since we're running a little bit low on time, we're getting to the hour. We don't want to keep you any longer than you have to stay. If you have any strategies you want to share for everybody there, uh, go ahead and put them in the Q&A so we can read them out loud. And then let's go ahead and go down to the next slide. Sheila, there. Thank you. So here's what I want you to do, and if you can put this reflection in the Q&A if you want, or if you just want to think about it to yourself and maybe make some notes to yourself, that's fine as well. But so pick a strategy that we talked about today. So either one that I mentioned, or maybe one that was mentioned in the Q&A. So think about one of those strategies, and then think about where it could fit into an upcoming lesson that you'll have, and maybe how you'll plan to use it. Okay, so that was the point of this, is to just give you some quick ideas that you could quickly and easily implement into your lesson plan. So if there's some ways that you can think of that you want to bring up and put it in the Q&A and give other people ideas as well, that's great. Or at least just make note to yourself, and so you know how to fit it into your lesson in the future. All right, go ahead and move to the next one, Sheila. So, because I want to get to these key takeaways. So, the key takeaways, what Sheila started talking about in the beginning about systems thinking. System thinking reveals how roles and actions connect. So, students start seeing what is their part in these bigger systems that they're going to be a part of, in teams that they're going to be a part of. So, outcomes result from interactions, not solo effort. So, we don't want kiddos to work in silos. We don't want them to get used to that. That's something we encounter probably in our lives, people working in silos. We want to make sure people are collaborating, working as a team. Success relies on awareness, communication, and accountability. So those are three of the skills that we highlighted today and gave you some activities and strategies to work on. Executive functioning guides self-management and systems. Yes, those executive functioning skills are very important, and there are skills that sometimes we forget that students sometimes actually need to be taught. They need to be taught these executive functioning skills like time management and being organized and things like that. And the last thing there, and I've said this several times, classrooms are ideal for practicing these skills. Classrooms are where students they may be the first time they're exposed to some of these things. And it's a safe environment where they're among their peers and friends, where teachers can give them good feedback. So then when they're out in the world, they're prepared. They're ready to use these skills when they really need to use them. All right. And if you have any questions, you can put those in the Q&A box as well. And then let's go ahead and go to that last slide before we turn it back over to Trina. Oh, I guess we are turning it back over to Trina now. All right, go ahead, Trina. Thank you.
Well, thank you two very much. That was a really informative webinar, and it gave me a lot of great examples to try, especially even not just in the classroom, but even at home with my own kids. So I got a lot of great ideas about that. So thank you both so much. I'd like to turn the attendance participation or attention to the evaluation. There's a QR code here, and there's a web address as well as it being in the chat. So if you can't get the QR code to work, you can also use the chat and just use that link there that's posted in the chat for everyone. So let's see.
Trina, I can just move it forward if you need me to, so you don't have to.
That sounds great. Yeah, go right ahead. And I think a quick view at what's next. We are rapidly running to the end of our series. Thank you all for watching this academic year. There's going to be one final one left. It's kind of a final wrap up. So it's just like being back in school, no new material, but just a kind of a celebration of the year that's been. And it's going to look a little bit different. First of all, it's in the first week of May of the month, not the second week. So it's May 6th, 4 to 5 p.m. And it's going to be a showcase of the partner school district that Ascend 307 has been working with this year. So, and their experiences and their successes. So be sure to register for that. That's on the Ascend 307 website, along with the link to this recording as soon as it's available and the handouts. And next slide. Thank you. For more information, there's my contact information, and we can go ahead and